A respected federal prosecutor's mother is gunned down in broad daylight by a police officer with a history of unchecked violence. When the justice system hesitates to act, her daughter takes matters into her own hands, uncovering a chain of cover-ups, silence, and racial bias. What follows is a gripping courtroom battle where the truth must rise against the weight of a broken system. This is a fictional story told with realism, filled with emotion, courage, and a relentless pursuit of justice. Before we begin, if you enjoy powerful, emotional stories based on real-life struggles and justice, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment to share your thoughts. Your support means the world and helps us continue creating meaningful narratives for you. Now, let's begin the story. The sun filtered gently through the stained glass windows of Mount Zion Baptist Church. The choir had just finished its final hymn. Grace Jefferson, dressed in her usual lavender Sunday best, smiled and waved as she stepped outside. Her hands still held the warmth of her friends as they bid her goodbye on the church steps. She walked with a quiet dignity, a purse tucked under one arm and her Bible in the other. Her silver hair shimmered in the afternoon light. This neighborhood knew her well. For over 30 years, she had taught their children, led their book clubs, and fed the hungry from her own small kitchen. A black sedan rolled to a stop just beyond the corner. It wasn't a patrol car. There were no lights, no insignia. Behind the wheel sat Detective Cole Riker, off-duty, unshaven, a stain of coffee on his shirt. He had been driving around for hours, simmering in a cocktail of leftover rage from a case that had gone cold. He watched Grace as she crossed the street. Something about her triggered him. Maybe the way she ignored his car. Maybe the way she looked like she belonged. He rolled down his window. "Hey, you got a problem, ma'am?" His voice cut through the quiet street like a blade. Grace paused, turned toward him with a puzzled look. She kept her distance. "No problem, sir. Just heading home. You didn't stop at that sign. You know that's illegal." "There's no stop sign here, sir," she said, her voice still calm. Riker stepped out of the car. No badge showing. No body cam. His hand twitched at his hip. Neighbors would later recall the sharp crack of 2 gunshots. Birds scattered from nearby trees. Grace Jefferson fell to the ground, her Bible flying from her hand, pages fluttering in the wind. A teenage boy on his bike was the first to reach her. He screamed for help. Riker stood over her body for a moment. No phone call, no CPR. He stared down, then finally pulled out his badge and shouted into the air. "Officer-involved shooting." She reached into her bag, but Grace's purse lay untouched beside her. Closed. Zipped. Her hand had never left her Bible. Down the block, an old security camera blinked silently in the window of a corner store. Watching, recording, waiting. By nightfall, news vans lined the block. Police tape fluttered in the wind like forgotten prayer flags. A spokesperson from the department gave a brief statement. Officer Riker, acting in self-defense. The victim had made a sudden movement. Investigation ongoing. Inside a small hotel room in Richmond, federal prosecutor Maya Jefferson stood frozen in front of the television. The face on the screen was her mother. A picture taken at her last community awards ceremony. Her smile wide, her posture proud. The caption beneath, it chilled Maya to the bone. Elderly woman fatally shot by off-duty officer in possible misunderstanding. Maya's phone rang. It was Agent Luis Ramos from the Federal Bureau. His voice was steady but careful. "Maya, it's Grace. I'm sorry." She sat down slowly, trying to breathe. The room grew silent except for the whir of the ceiling fan. Early the next morning, Maya returned to her mother's neighborhood. The church still smelled like lilies from yesterday's service. On the sidewalk where Grace had fallen, someone had placed a single white candle. No flowers yet, just wax and wind. She watched as 2 officers loaded Riker into an unmarked cruiser. He wasn't in handcuffs. His face wasn't bruised. He didn't look sorry. A small crowd had gathered across the street. No shouting, just eyes. Tired, knowing eyes. Maya walked past them without a word. She made her way to the corner store and knocked on the metal shutter until the owner unlocked it. He had already reviewed the footage. His hands trembled slightly as he handed her the flash drive. "You'll want to see this," he said. Maya took it, She didn't ask questions. Her fingers closed around the plastic like it was glass. Later that night, alone in her apartment, she watched the video. No sound, just motion. Grace Jefferson walking. Riker's car pulling up. Words exchanged. The moment he stepped out, his hand going for the gun. No hesitation, no threat, no visible fear. Grace barely had time to turn. Maya rewound it, watched it again, and again. She paused the footage. The timestamp blinked. She stared at her mother's frozen image, mid-step, alive, then gone. Her breath caught, not because of the horror, but because of the certainty. This was not a mistake. This was not a misunderstanding. And Maya Jefferson, federal prosecutor with a flawless conviction record, was about to go to war. The following morning, Maya walked into the federal building wearing a charcoal gray suit and a silence that said more than grief. Her colleagues offered nods and murmured condolences, but no one dared stop her path. Her eyes were fixed, her steps exact. She entered the Internal Affairs Division and laid the flash drive on the table without a word. Agent Ramos was already there, seated with 2 other investigators. The room was sterile, buzzing with cold light and guarded language. "Play it," Maya said. They watched the footage. Twice. Ramos leaned forward, hands clasped. "This is damning." Maya didn't blink. "Then treat it like evidence." "We will," said the senior agent, a tall woman with a lined face and a slow voice. "But the local department still has first jurisdiction, and they haven't filed charges. Yet." Maya's jaw tensed. "He murdered her. There are protocols." "No," Maya said. "There's protection." They all knew what she meant. Cole Riker had been shielded for years. A career cop with a record that read clean on paper but stank under scrutiny. Whispered complaints. Cases dropped. A pattern that never made it to headlines. He belonged to that circle of officers who had friends at the right desks and ghosts in the wrong neighborhoods. Maya returned to her office. She pulled files, not of her own cases, but Riker's. She found inconsistencies, testimonies that were never followed up, witnesses who recanted without explanation. She started making calls. The first woman she reached was a nurse who had filed a complaint 3 years ago. Riker had stopped her late at night, made her get out of her car, then shoved her against the hood. She had bruises and filed a report. Nothing came of it. "I'm scared," the nurse said over the phone. "He knows where I live." "I understand," Maya said. "But you're not alone anymore." By the end of the week, Maya had 6 names. All women, all black, all harassed or intimidated by Cole Riker during traffic stops or neighborhood patrols. None of their cases ever saw court. She compiled the documents, the statements, the video, and submitted them to the Federal Hate Crimes Division. The silence from City Hall was deafening. No press conference, no apology, just routine updates. The department called Riker's actions under review. He had been placed on administrative leave, with pay. Maya stood at her mother's grave the day after the announcement. The grass was still soft, the flowers still fresh. "I will not let this end like the others," she whispered. Behind her, Agent Ramos approached with careful steps. "You'll need distance if this goes federal," he said. "You can't prosecute it yourself." "I know. You sure you're ready to watch someone else argue for your mother?" Maya looked at him, her voice quiet but razor sharp. "I'm not here for closure. I'm here for justice." And that justice was coming. The courthouse stood like a monument to order, but the crowd outside made it feel like a battleground. News crews jockeyed for space behind the barriers. Protesters lined the sidewalk, holding signs with Grace Jefferson's face beside words like justice, no more silence, and convict him now. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Cole Riker sat at the defense table, his hair neatly trimmed, his expression unreadable. His lawyer, a smooth-talking man from a high-profile firm, whispered something in his ear. Riker gave the faintest nod. On the prosecution side, Assistant United States Attorney Jillian Becker prepared her files. Maya Jefferson sat in the gallery, her hands folded in her lap, her face an unshakable mask. She had surrendered the case professionally, but in every way that mattered, she was still leading the charge. The judge entered. Eleanor Sharp, known for her sharp tongue and iron backbone. She surveyed the room with cool authority. "This is a federal criminal trial in the matter of United States versus Cole Riker," she announced. "Charges include first-degree murder under color of law and a violation of civil rights resulting in death." Opening statements began. The defense painted Riker as a seasoned officer who acted on instinct. They leaned heavily on the claim that he believed Grace Jefferson was reaching for a weapon. They described a man haunted by years on the street, making split-second decisions in a world where hesitation could be fatal. But the prosecution countered with precision. They showed the footage, frame by frame. Grace Jefferson's hands never moving toward her purse. Her posture calm, her pace steady. No threat, no sudden movement, just 2 bullets. Then came the complaints. 6 women, 6 stories, each detailing how Riker had used his badge to intimidate, harass, and humiliate. Each one dismissed by the system. Each one ignored, until now. One by one, the women took the stand. They spoke slowly, some through tears, others with quiet fire. The jury listened. The gallery leaned forward. Then came the twist. A witness appeared on the stand. A man in uniform. Officer James Bentley. Younger than Riker. Clean record. Quiet. The courtroom stilled when he began. "I was his partner for 3 months, Bentley said. He used to talk about how to provoke people into getting themselves arrested." The defense objected. Overruled. He said, and I quote, "It's not about justice. It's about control. If they flinch, that's enough." Murmurs filled the courtroom. Riker's jaw clenched for the first time. "And did you report this?" asked Becker. "I tried, but no one followed up." The courtroom didn't erupt. It sank into realization, into rage. Judge Sharp called a recess. As the crowd shuffled out, Maya remained seated, eyes fixed on the place where Riker had just been. The cracks had started to show, and she knew the foundation would soon give way. The final week of the trial settled over the city like heavy rain. Each day brought new testimony, each piece of nail in the coffin of the defense. The gallery filled with more than just reporters now. Former officers, civil rights advocates, families who had once tried to speak but were told to stay quiet. Inside the jury box, 12 faces carried the weight of a nation's gaze. No cameras were allowed, but sketches from the courtroom showed their eyes, tired, focused, unblinking. The prosecution's closing argument was not loud. It was not theatrical. Jillian Becker spoke in a voice low enough that people had to lean in. She was 71, unarmed, walking home from church. She did not run. She did not resist. She did not pose a threat. But she was black. And to this man, she pointed to Riker. That was enough. She paused. Justice is not vengeance. It is not payback. It is the simple truth standing firm in the face of power. And the truth is, he murdered her. The defense's closing was polished, rehearsed. They leaned on fear, on chaos, on what-ifs. They showed blurred images of other violent incidents, trying to stain the jury's mind with shadows that didn't belong to Grace Jefferson. She reached into her bag. The lawyer repeated. How could he know she wasn't armed? That's the question. But the jury had seen the footage. They had heard the voices. They had felt the silence after every shot. Deliberations began that afternoon. They lasted longer than expected. 31 hours. Inside the jury room, arguments rose and fell. One juror, a middle-aged man in construction boots, was hesitant. He was a cop, he kept saying. They're trained to react. But the others pushed back. A teacher reminded him of the nurse's testimony. A retired postal worker brought up the timestamp on the footage. A young mother spoke of her son, how he walked home from church just like Grace had. By the second day, they reached a verdict. The courtroom was at full capacity when they returned. Riker sat motionless, but Maya noticed the tightness in his jaw, the twitch in his thumb. The jury forewoman, a woman with iron-gray hair and sharp eyes, stood as the judge asked the question. Have you reached a unanimous verdict? We have, Your Honor. The room held its breath. In a matter of United States versus Cole Riker, on the charge of first-degree murder under color of law, we find the defendant guilty. Gasps. A hand clutched a mouth. Someone sobbed in the back. The judge waited for silence. On the charge of civil rights violation resulting in death, We find the defendant guilty. Cole Riker did not move. Not even when the cuffs were placed around his wrists. Not even when he was led away. He was sentenced 1 week later. Death. The gavel echoed once, final as thunder. Outside, it began to rain. Maya stepped out into the storm and let the drops soak through her coat. It was not relief, not peace, but it was something close to silence. And for the first time since that Sunday, she could breathe. The media descended like crows. For days, headlines screamed justice had been served. They flashed images of Grace Jefferson beside the words historic verdict and officer sentenced to death. But for Maya Jefferson, justice was not a headline. It was her mother's name, no longer whispered with pity. The days that followed were quiet in a strange way. Friends and strangers left candles on Maya's doorstep. Letters arrived from other families. Mothers, daughters, sons who had never gotten their day in court. They wrote to say thank you, to say they believed again, just a little. But Maya didn't answer right away. She stayed in her apartment, sorting through old photo albums. In one, Grace stood in front of a classroom, chalk in hand, a smile on her face. In another, she held baby Maya in the sunlight outside their first home. There was strength in every photo, a quiet, stubborn strength. One morning, Agent Ramos stopped by. He brought no files, no updates, just a small brown envelope. "What's this?" Maya asked. He hesitated. "Something the warden's office forwarded." Riker wrote it before his transfer. Maya opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single sheet of line paper, handwritten. "I didn't think anyone would fight back. I thought I'd walk like always. I was wrong. You made sure of that. No apology. No name. Just those few sentences signed with a blank space." Maya folded the paper without expression and dropped it into the trash. The world outside had moved on. The news cycle had shifted. Another story, another outrage. But something had changed. The city council passed new legislation. Body cameras would be required even off-duty. A civilian oversight board gained real power. Officers with repeated complaints would no longer be protected behind closed doors. Maya didn't attend the ceremony. She didn't want applause. She didn't want recognition. What she wanted was her mother back. Instead, she went to Mount Zion Baptist Church one quiet Sunday. She sat in the back pew. The choir sang the same hymn from the day Grace died. The stained glass still caught the light just right. After the service, a small girl approached her, maybe 7 years old, hair in braids, holding a picture she'd drawn in crayon. "It's your mama," the girl said. "I drew her as an angel." Maya took the picture and smiled for the first time in weeks. Outside, the neighborhood felt softer. The corner where Grace had fallen now held a small bronze plaque in the sidewalk. It read, "Grace Jefferson, teacher, mother, loved. You are seen." Maya walked past it and kept going. The wind carried the faint sound of church bells. Above her, the clouds broke just enough to let the sun shine through. She did not look back. She didn't need to. The silence had finally changed. It now carried her mother's name, and the echo of justice fulfilled. This story reminds us that justice is not automatic. It must be fought for with truth, courage, and perseverance. It shows how silence can protect injustice, but how one voice, when guided by love and righteousness, can break through that silence. The story of Maya Jefferson is not just about a daughter seeking justice for her mother. It is about every unheard voice, every ignored plea, and the power of refusing to stay silent when it matters most. Though the story is fictional, it is written to reflect the reality many people face around the world. It is crafted to feel real so that we may reflect, learn, and carry its lessons into our lives. Thank you for listening to this story. If you found meaning in it, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing to this channel. Your support helps more stories like this reach hearts that need them. See you in the next story.